Alright guys, Tactical back again today. Hope you're enjoying your Thursday so far, and today we have to talk about gentleman's agreement once again. We had this topic discussion a while ago, but now it seems to have gone to the next level, to the point where a number of pro players, as we will talk about in coming minutes here, believe this time it has just gone too far. Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you are new, make sure you don't miss any of the latest Call of Duty competitive news, rumours, analysis, updates, all of that good stuff. Wanted to mention this because a few of you were pointing it out to me, the fact that the CDL playlist right now is completely bugged. I believe for pretty much everyone, if you go into the game right now, you'll get put into a free-for-all. This has been the case for, well, almost 2 days now. No word from Infinity Ward, I believe, as of recording, that they're going to be fixing this anytime soon. Just classic, really. You know, they're adding all these stickers and stuff into the game for competitive, but the CDL playlist, they can't even seem to get that right. Every update seems to be, if there is some steps forwards, there's definitely some steps back as well. Hopefully this gets fixed in the coming days, because it's not a good look, right? And especially because people want to try out the new meta, they're not even able to do that. So look, let's talk about GAs. A couple of days ago, I mentioned Parasite saying that all ammo conversions, melee weapons, you know, has been passed. So a gentleman's agreement, if you guys are new to the concept, is where the professionals decide that, like, there's things that are allowed in public matches that really we don't want to be allowed in competitive play because it ruins the balance, it ruins how good the game is to watch, and it makes, well, effectively, they always talk about skill gap and things, reducing the skill gap and things like that. And to some degree, they can be viable, they can be, you know, reasonable in certain circumstances. However, a lot of people are saying that this time it's just gone too far, right? So a while ago, we had this discussion around the Merc foregrip on the MP5, that being GA'd. It gave you a really tight hipfire spread to the point where the MP5 was very, very strong indeed. And the pros decided, look, we just don't want to use this attachment anymore. It's making the MP5 too good at certain ranges where it really shouldn't be, and giving MP5 players too much of a leg up in certain engagements where they shouldn't really have any sort of advantage. So that was dealt with. And then, of course, at the time, we had the discussion about 10mm ammunition. And now, since this most recent update with the 10mm actually getting worse, or the MP5 in general getting worse, we did talk about some of the technicalities yesterday, but now they decide they're going to go, in addition to the 41 AE rounds on the Uzi, which make it so strong as we will look at, and all other ammo conversions as well, if you wanted to try the 5.56mm rounds on the AUG, which apparently makes that very strong as well. And then the whole melee weapons thing is just, well, where this thing goes to another level. So as Scraps talks about, got on today, we have a new GA, so the Uzi is dead, and now I'm trying this. So really crazy situation, right? We have this nerf for the MP5 that we're looking at in a second here that effectively makes the MP5 to the point where the Uzi is now, the pros just discover that the Uzi over the last couple of days is very, very strong indeed. And then they decide, well, okay, the Uzi is actually too strong. We're going to ban these rounds, which basically kills the Uzi from relative competitive play. And now we're back to effectively like a two-gun meta, right? You could argue, with the MP5 and the M4, just as it was when the pros are complaining. However, that's not exactly the case completely yet, because as Simp says in reply, feel like the MP7 is about to be it now. So who knows if this is going to be the new meta in competitive play. And as we're looking in a second here, it does seem like that is certainly arguable from what ZooMaa says. He's been trying out a number of different weapons, all ammo conversions, Merc foregrip, ATS, that's auto, taxman, and snaking, all GA'd right now from competitive play. This is what the MP5 looks like, courtesy of Exclusive Ace. So the most recent thing, the 10mm post was somewhat nerfed, but in other senses, maybe it got slightly better. Anyway, they've since decided that the 10mm is gone, and we're going to be back to, if you want to use the MP5, you got to use the 9mm post. So this isn't ideal. Of course, the 6-shot kill at range is, I mean, it was incredible the MP5 ever killed at 5 shots at range with this 10mm ammo anyway, given that the M4 cross map kills in 6 shots. But, you know, this difference between 10mm and 9mm isn't incredibly drastic like it is when we look at the Uzi. The 41 AE rounds had a 3-shot kill to the upper torso all the way out to like over 25 meters. Now back to the base Uzi, it's a very rough showing indeed for what the Uzi does now compared to what it did do. So basically, the Uzi came into the meta for a couple of days. They decided to GA the 41 AE rounds, and now this gun really has got significantly worse. Like, maybe it's still viable at some ranges, but you know, it's nowhere near as viable as it was with those rounds in play. So once again, the meta changing very significantly. And as ZooMaa says, it ran 4 different SMGs today, 2 months left in the game. MP7, Wave Brother, it's a blast. Yep, think that may be the one, but honestly, still undecided. So maybe the MP7 is coming into competitive play. Is the Uzi still good enough to compete? Is the MP5 still good enough to compete? A lot of questions right now, but maybe it's going to be an interesting few days. Where this really gets interesting, though, I suppose, is the discussion around the knife being GA'd. There's also talk, of course, on what to do with the M4 M4, because in the most recent update, no stock got nerfed, which hurt the M4 more than it did the SMGs. So people are saying, like, what do you use now? Do you use the Corvus or the M16 barrel? And are you using no stock, or are you using TAC laser to increase like the hipfire spread and maybe the sprint out time and that kind of stuff? I think M16 TAC laser is nasty, so maybe this is what some of the pros are going with. Some people also talking about some of the other stocks that you can potentially use on it as well. So let's go into some of the pros having frustrations with this. Crimsix tweets this out. They want a GA ammo, so the different ammo conversions. Hell no, I'm running 5.56 rounds on the AUG. Lamar can go suck my sack, says Hook. So Lamar being accuracy, who has always been an instigator of these GAs, you could say over the last few years of CoD. So who knows whether Hook actually said this, but of course there's obviously some frustrations that these things are being changed so significantly with only a couple of months left in the game. Felony then says it took everyone 4 to 5 months to GA the Merc foregrip, which a lot of people felt was a big deal, but it took ages for that to happen. But now we are banning a combat knife. Now, we'll have a look exactly at what the reasons are for banning this combat knife, but once again, I think it is probably a case of pros GAing stuff that isn't beneficial for their team. There's always that that motive behind the scenes that you're going to try and support or, you know, go against whatever's going to be beneficial for your team, and there's no like CDL overarching infrastructure that decides what is going to be allowed and what isn't allowed. The pros are kind of, left up to decide amongst themselves, and even most recently we saw on the CDL broadcast, they referenced the gentleman's agreements, and, that's not something that I thought the CDL would do, but they're respecting the pros' opinions on what should and shouldn't be used. But at the end of the day, the problem is that teams are going to choose the things to ban that don't affect their team as much as they affect other teams. And of course, if you don't agree to their GA, then you're not going to be allowed to scrim them and you're blacklisted, all of this kind of stuff that we've talked about a number of times in the past. Frosty says, of course, on the Florida Mutineers, Modern Warfare got people going psycho, and then really it was Wuskins that came out to talk about exactly why this is such a big deal to him. About to say, screw the GA, play my own game. People want to change now but didn't want to months ago. Laughable. And Scraps replies like, why is that GA'd? The knife, the freaking knife. As he says right here. So Bryce obviously isn't particularly happy with it. Niall does say, look, GAs are needed, but maybe this one is taking it just a step too far on this one. Then you've got this interesting thread with Marky B and Defrag. So Marky B says, I'd agree not banning the knife. Then I've seen the squad 2v4 on Petro, so some Petrograd domination B flag with a smoke and a knife. Too much luck involved. So what he's saying is that when you're capping the flag, throw a smoke down, get your knife out and just sprint around in the smoke, like, stabbing people. And there's, there's too much luck involved in that is what he's saying. Then again, I really agree with Defrag saying that it literally breaks the S&D and break-off timings. So when you have the tack knife equipped, you sprint, or your tack sprint lasts for double the duration. So you go a further distance and it's quicker to sprint with a knife than it is for any other weapon in the game. Therefore, it really breaks the timings in Search and Destroy if you're not allowed to use that anymore and you have to use a pistol instead if it's going to be banned. And as Marky B says, there's a bunch of situations that you can abuse it, but maybe the annoyance isn't as great as it could have been in some situations. And then this is really where I think it's telling here from Clayster. So Clay replies, bro, we GA'd it last year, and I imagine that is the case in Black Ops 4. They weren't allowed to use it as well, but it didn't really have the same implications for the timings, I don't believe. So maybe not as big of a deal, but anyway, you have the king of knife smoke on your team. Talking about Dylan, don't make me pull the strap out and show the trigger finger. So look, basically what I'm implying here, what I'm taking away from this Clayster thing is he's saying like, look, we GA'd it last year, and your team is the one with the smoke knife king. We can't compete with Dylan running around with his knife out and smokes. You see a lot of clips on St. Petrograd and the pool hall or whatever, when you just put a smoke down, you run around with your knife killing people. That's a pretty common thing that people do. And maybe that's uncompetitive to some degree or whatever. But it seems to me that, like, Clayster's saying, like, London, you have Dylan on your team who's really, really good at knife smoking. We aren't as good, therefore we want it gone, right? That's what this sounds like to me. That they've decided that, okay, other teams are better than this, better at using it than we are. Therefore, it should just go from the game, right? And once again, it comes back to the whole point that if you're a team that wants to GA something, it's probably because your team benefits more than the average team in the league benefits from this, which really is where it comes down to an issue. And we did talk before how, maybe get a guy like Kambo or something, or whoever, former professional players like Swanee, to have like a league overarching body that communicates with the players and decides what is going to be GA'd and what is not, and make sure these things are actually properly voted for and decided about. Because at the end of the day, if like pros are just going to decide, and let's say like 5 of the best teams decide it should go, then all the other teams have to agree, because otherwise they're not going to get practice against the best teams in the game, because the best teams are going to be like, yo, you're using knife in scrims, like that's not allowed, right? So It's not necessarily guaranteed that this is out of the game yet, but it seems like it. And Slack discusses as well, AR was amazing on 60 Hz. Now, most recently, we talked about these practice issues as well. We're playing 12 Hz for the last few weeks. So, you know, and then they're saying all the subs are being banned effectively. And so basically what he's saying is that on 60 Hz, the AR was actually better. Now on 12 Hz, we seem to be banning every sub. So when we go back to 60 Hz, the meta isn't going to be what it should have been if we were playing on 60 Hz the whole time. Conclusion, game's even worse, and I'm not having fun. So that's a pretty consistent thing throughout this entire season for Slack. And then we get some more discussion, right? New meta stinks. M4, MP5 meta was fine. The M4 was the best gun. Every AR is in the GA chat right now. So, you know, it seems like the growl, all the other things are being said, like, yeah, we're not allowed to use it. It's just M4 time all over. I can't believe people are letting these GAs rock, says Classic. So, intrigued to hear your thoughts down below on this stuff as always. Like, do you think this has gone too far this time if the knife is being banned because it's like uncompetitive that you can use it in a smoke and get kills? That supposedly is the reasoning. I can understand the whole, the Uzi GA and the MP5 GA to bring those weapons down to the point where they don't dominate. Because look, we've spent several months on like an 80% SMGs on every single map, pretty much apart from Azir Cave. Like it's almost always 4 MP5s, you know, 4 like 1 M4 pretty much on the either team. So I don't really mind the fact that they decided, okay, let's given the M4 got worse with no stock, let's make the SMG slightly worse to the point where the M4 might be slightly more viable in comparison. So I don't really mind the ammo conversions, but it is kind of entertaining how it probably ends up that the MP5 is still the most viable weapon, but who knows, the MP7 could be the one as well. Seems like the Uzi has kind of been killed stone cold dead on this one though, unfortunately, but maybe some players will still manage to make it work without those ammunition rounds. But then you've got the knife situation, which in my opinion probably just does take things slightly too far. Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new. I will see you next time.